Okay, great stuff. Welcome to Matters of the Soul. It's lovely to be with you and spend time with you. I'm Erich Schoeman, a clinical psychologist and Christian communicator. That's the nice word. And what I do with my time is I have a clinical practice and I present workshops and all kinds of uh, talks on Facebook and YouTube and churches and businesses and whatever. So I do a lot of stuff, and tonight what I'm going to do is I'm going to spend some time with you on couples and communication. Um, I just have a technical little thing here that I want to sort out, and I'm struggling. I'm just struggling to sort it out. I don't. It seems like I'm not. I can't find myself on Facebook. So okay. But in any case, so I'm going to talk to you about couples and communication. Now you have heard this topic probably a number of times, and you know a lot about it probably already. If you're married, then you've heard that thing of couples and communication is the most important thing in your relationship. If you don't communicate, then that's going to be bad for your relationship. You know, that whole thing. You got to sit on the couch and communicate. So, uh, communicate. So you've got to eat something. There you guys, come and eat. So I think communication has been spoken about so much that it's difficult to really. I mean, when I first heard it, I thought, yes, it's very important. Communication is important, but but I didn't really understand the full gist of it, and I certainly didn't really know how to communicate. So during my training years as a psychologist, that's when I was really introduced to what communication really is, and I think that nailed it for me in the good sense. It brought it to life, and that helped me to understand what it really means. And then for my wife too. So I've been married for 22 and a half years to Elsie, and happily married for most of it. So we had our ups and downs, but we've had to really work at communication. So it's not been easy. It's not just been you know an easy ride to learn how to effectively communicate. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to chat to you tonight about some thoughts about communication. Obviously, I won't be able to fit it all into this 1 hour, but I want to share some things with you, some basic principles, some of which you might have heard, but some of which you might never have heard of. And I'm going to show you some of the wonderful things. So what I'm doing in my practice is I apply this. I apply this with couples, and just got feedback today on how effectively that has worked for a couple and how it's really saved their marriage. And obviously had some clients who's said no to the process, and one lady recently argued with me, fought with me about how wrong I was, that it was all her husband's fault. Now, sometimes some people won't accept these things, so it's difficult for them, and it's usually pain that speaks. Okay, but so in sharing with you communication, I do hope that I'm going to land a few thoughts and a few basic principles. What I do during workshops is I take couples through a process with a lot of laughter, where they can start to experiment and play around with some of these things of communication. Okay, so I want to share just some things in me and my wife's relationship, and I share this with permission that from her. So what we had to learn was to really work at two basic things. The first thing is how we talk, and the other one was how we listen and how we resolve things. So next time I'll be speaking about fair fighting and about how to have conflict, but today I'm just going to talk about how to communicate, how to talk to each other. Okay, so when you're born, you start to communicate with your parents. I just want to say it's so hot in my office here. I'm under the lights as well, and you might see some bugs flying around because I've got all the windows open and I live in the bush, so I expect some bugs to come and visit us. So okay, but in any case, what we had to learn is how to talk on the one hand and how to listen. So when you're born, you start to talk and you start to convey messages to people around you about what you need. And so, and most of the time, babies actually, I don't know, they just scream and then they get their needs met in some way. So parents get anxious, and especially first-time parents, and they start running around, and they figure out at least they're hungry or they're thirsty, or they've got a wet nappy or whatever, a dirty nappy, and then or they're tired. Most of the time, I think it's those. But later on, as you grow up, you've got to start to communicate feelings as well, and needs, and things that you want and that you don't want, and that you like and you don't like, and that's already a learning curve. And then you've got to start talking about things that you want and other people don't want, and then you've got to learn to negotiate, and then people will obviously hurt you, and then you've got to learn to fight fairly, to communicate through conflict, and then you've also got to make sure that you express yourself and to treat other people in such a way that you actually build relationships. So there's a huge growth process with communication, and I guess, a clinical guess is that I think many of us have a lot of gaps in our formation years on how to really express ourselves. Many of us don't have proper examples, and I'm not shaming and blaming parents here, because most of them tried their best, not all of them, but most of them, with the knowledge they had. I'm not saying they're perfect, they also made mistakes, but you've got your own life to live. You've got to work on your own relationships. So now you're married, you've got a partner, and you two have to then express all these intricate things to each other. So and understand each other, and actually through doing that get to like each other more and want to be nearer to the other person, even so close that you want to have sex with him. So that's the idea here. But so there's a guy named Paul Watzlawick, and in clinical psychology, in communication science and systems theory, he's well known. He said, you cannot not communicate. I know it's late at night and it was a Monday, but can say that again. You cannot not communicate. So the idea there is that you cannot not say something. Even silence says a lot. So the idea there is that everything you say and do says something, and it all contributes to affecting the other person. So I'll take you through some steps there. I see some people are saying hello, and I'm saying hello too. Hello Susan. Hello Amelia. It's nice to see you joining me. What is happening is that when you're interacting with people, everything you do and everything you don't do says something to them. Now in psychology these days, I'm not going to bore you with communications theory too much, but I want to just emphasize a few things. When you're in the military, then usually if you want to bomb a target, I use these examples with my clients. If you want to bomb a target, you've got to make sure that the bomber and the person who gives the instruction, that they understand each other, which target is going to be bombed. And if you don't have written ways of communicating it, you've got to talk over the two-way radio and give a message. Bomb target B27. And then the other guy's got to say, he's got to repeat, bomb target B27. If he doesn't, he bombs target B272 or whatever. He's going to bomb another target. And the idea there is that there's got to be some confirmation of what I've said. Because let me give you some just basic things on how communication works. And this is now the boring part. But there's usually a sender of a message and there's a receiver. So it's two parties involved. And the sender must make sure that the message he wants to send is the message that he actually wants to say. So you've got to make sure that you communicate clearly. Just this weekend, my wife said to me, I'm receiving a double message, meaning a conflicting message from you. You're saying this, but then a minute later you say that. So you say you want this, but then a bit later you say you want that. I'm not sure what you're saying to me. So that helps me to clarify my message. And then the receiver has to make sure that they listen to the message and make sure that they understand clearly what the sender has told them. And that they've got the responsibility to clarify with the sender to say, listen, are you saying this or are you saying that? Am I understanding you correctly? Or are you communicating correctly? Now that's the basic thing, but you've got to have this, because if you many a times what happens is people say things and they expect the other person to understand them because they feel this so intensely. I mean, they feel hurt, and then they just express themselves, and they express themselves in the way that they were taught as a child and as a young person, that they've always done. And they don't necessarily know whether that is the best way to do that. Now, when you teach your children, you tell them, no, you don't say that. You've got to teach them manners. So manners is usually a socially appropriate way of communicating, of expressing yourself. But then we've got to enhance our manners when we are in a marital relationship, because that's the relationship that requires the most intimate form of communication. So you've got to have exquisite manners in a marital relationship. But people do the opposite. They think, I'm married now. You got to understand my soul. I mean, if you don't know me by now, you've never known me. They think that, that the other person will just know them just because they live with them. But people don't read minds, even psychologists. I was shocked to learn through my training that I can't read minds. What a waste. Okay, so I couldn't read minds, but I can observe behavior and I can feel the effect of how you treat me. Saying that I can see what you're saying through your body language, through your tone of voice. Is it incredibly, or your facial expression? So people think that the other person hurt them, so they should just accept what is coming their way now. And what happens is then people start to send messages. The other person receives the message, but they don't check whether this message is correct. And then this person reacts on what they've heard there and what they think they've heard. And then this person reacts again, and this person reacts, and it goes pear-shaped, because people don't check. Did I hear correctly? Am I making sure that you've expressed it in the best way? Am I really listening to what that person is saying? Oh, it's just people just talk and they just blurt it all out because they're stressed. They're hurt by the other person. They're angry. Oh, it doesn't work. Okay, any case, so a lot of these things then don't work. So if you want to communicate effectively, you've got to work on a number of things in your own style. So I first want to answer a few things. So you can see that there has to be a way for you to check, have I heard correctly? And the person who sends the message must make sure that the message was sent correctly. Many a times I thought my wife is not listening to me. Meantime, I wasn't really expressing myself well. So I had to learn the vocabulary of saying what I'm feeling and saying what I need. That doesn't really do it. So I started off being a quiet person, and then I would expect my wife, I would assume that she would now understand what I'm saying and feeling. I wouldn't really be clear, and then she wouldn't really understand what I was feeling, and she would just not check really as well, and then I would be upset and hurt, and she would be angry because now I would blame her, and then she would react, and oh, there goes the thing. Okay, so couples and communication is really intense. So what you've got to do is you've got to start to say, okay, let me work on my communication at least. Even my partner's not working on that, that sucks. But if you can at least start to work on your share of it, your side of it. Now, obviously, that's, as you now heard, I'm a Christian, so I will punctuate, or I will give you that point of view too. I'll integrate it with this. Obviously, that is what love really is. That's what the Lord expects of His children, is to make sure that they treat the other person well. Now, how you treat that person is really what you communicate to them. So if you cannot not communicate, if everything you say and do is communication, then that means everything that you are going to say and do has to be done in a way that is clear, that has the basis of love, then, because that's what the Lord wants, and forgiveness. So the foundation of it has to be love and forgiveness, the impetus, the motivation. Now, am I doing that all the time? No. Through trial and error and lots of grace, I've had to learn to talk slower, to react slower, to pray before I speak, because I would just put my foot in it if I just speak. So you've got to think before you do. You know, the Proverbs are full of the fools who just speak. You know, they just blurt things out. Say, Solomon says, rather be quiet, and then people won't know you're a fool. You know, so a fool means somebody doesn't have wisdom, and wisdom says you serve the Lord. That's where it starts. So that means my heart is inclined to please the Lord in the way that I talk to my wife or my husband, in the way that I treat them. So it's not just talking. It's not just the quiet bouts when your partner's upset. Thank you, Francois. So it's not just those times. It's really how you go about treating people. And it's not just with couples. It's with your parents, with your siblings, with your co-workers, your boss, people at the shopping mall, everybody. It's how you come across. Now, okay, in psychology, we have started to decipher those and to say, okay, each person has a communication style. That means the way that you express yourself. So is a style. That means you've got a lot of ways that you express yourself and that you talk to people. And that style can either be effective or ineffective. That means it either works or it doesn't. So it reaches the goal for what you're trying to do, or it doesn't. So you've heard those people. I mean, I was at a shop the other day, and there was a guy. No, it was the bank. And the bank they have some transition going. So they're moving from tellers, physical people, to the internet. And they don't then have a lot of staff, so we're waiting. And there was this businessman who was furious about this, and then he would command the people to bring the manager to his feet, you know, and then he would rise up, and the manager would try to be polite, and then he would just be angry and vent all his frustration. And I would hear him on the phone as well with the people at his workplace, using lots of swear words and being in such an angry, aggressive, blaming tone. Obviously, that was intense. But that's the way this guy goes about. It's his way or the highway. He's got a controlling, blaming, offensive style. He fights with people if he wants his way. How do you think people feel around him? And what is the effect that he's got on other people? How does his wife feel? You know, she didn't cook. The food is not good. And then he just goes about rambling with a machine gun. Meaning he fights, he's aggressive, he is attacking, he pushes people away from him. So he's offensive. And the thing there is that all the time when you are talking or not talking, or whatever you're saying or not saying, it's got an effect on the other side. And that's the word that we like to call impact. So we say it impacts the other person, and it has an emotional effect. I was sitting there feeling quite tense because this guy is making a scene in the bank, which draws the attention, and he's really nasty towards this person. Now, the bank I think they also didn't handle the situation correctly. They are lackadaisy, and they're not giving good. But then he started talking, and then you could hear, but he's got other frustrations with this bank. Lots of frustrations. So the frustrations are building up, and he's got resentment. So this was the last straw. Meaning, there's also some empathy for him. Okay, so how he goes about, he didn't reach his goal. Nobody really sorted his problem. They actually called me, and they sorted my problem. I tried to be polite. I'm not Mr. Perfect, but I tried to be polite, and they called me, and they sorted my problem first. I think the way that you interact with people affects them. Now, in a couple's relationship, what you're going to say and do, how you're going to treat your partner, you shouldn't just expect them to just feel good. You have a share in that. Now, obviously, people misunderstand each other. Some people tell me I really try to express my empathy, my concern for my partner, my wife, and my husband, and they just misunderstood me. And that's where we've got to be sensitive in how we communicate, but also then check with the other person. What is it that you've heard me say? Because That's where misunderstandings happen, and then, like I said, people veer off. Okay, so I've now given you the idea that people communicate through everything that they say and do, that you know their tone of voice, body language, all those things. But then also it forms a style, and then couples go into this, what we call a dance. So the way they treat each other becomes a dance, and then the dance becomes a pattern. It becomes a way of how they actually interact with each other. And the longer they continue with it, it becomes a grooved pattern, like one of those old LPs, you know, that has all these little grooves. So it plays the same tune over and over, so they get stuck. And then sometimes, if you've got an effective dance, that means the way that you treat each other actually makes the other person feel loved and heard and understood. It doesn't make them feel blamed, misunderstood, and rejected. It makes them feel loved and understood. So you've got to choose which pattern do you want to set in your relationship. But the way that you're going to interact with each other is going to form a style. It's going to be a dance, which will eventually form a pattern, which will then form an LP. So me and Elsie have really tried, and we had to work, and I'm telling you, hard at this. Not once or twice. And me, as a psychologist, I went to another psychologist. Yes, I did. And I spent hours there getting trained in something that I was already trained in, but personally, getting feedback on the way I communicate. And it wasn't easy. I was also offended once or twice. Okay, so I was blaming. I didn't blame her. It's all her fault. Can you don't see it? You're blind. Useless therapist. That's what they say to me. You know, if I give people feedback, they usually end up being the useless therapist. If people come and tell me they've been to 7 therapists, oh, warning signs. Okay, you can see I've got some issues. Okay, no, the idea there is I've got to receive feedback and really work at this groove. And then me and my wife had to work at really saying, okay, even if the other person's not effective now, I've got to work on my effectiveness. So that's the stance of unconditional love, is saying, okay, loving the person even though they don't communicate clearly, even though they express themselves in a way that is blaming and hurtful. I've got to check with them, and I've got to work on how I express myself and how I interact with them. That is not easy. So lots of empathy from my side there, that it isn't easy. But it is the only way, really, to have this. And it builds a quality relationship. But my wife has told me in the past that it is difficult, you know. And being married to a psychologist also isn't easy. I don't think so. But eventually, you know, I do hope that it works. The idea there is that you've got to learn to grow in how you express yourself. Okay, so what is it that you want to express? So I've got some slides here. You've got to work on expressing a number of things. The idea here is that when you talk to your partner, most of the time you're going to be talking about what's happened, factual things, you know, stuff that's happened during the day, all the facts in the relationship, all the events, all the admin. But then you get personalized, you know, the deeper levels of communication. Then it becomes a bit more personalized when you start to talk about your needs and your feelings and how you feel about things. And then the really deep part is also talking about things that hurt you in the relationship. Now that's where you need ultra skills. Talking about general stuff is not difficult. Talking about other people is like really easy, you know. So it's because talking about other people, especially if you both don't like them, you know, that's the gossip is the easy part. But talking to each other about how you think and feel, that's where maturity comes in. So Christian maturity means that I know that I'm loved by the Lord. I know that Christ loves me. He loves me so much he died for me. And I know who I am in him, in my identity. Who's my identity? What's my identity? So I'm loved there. And then I can give love here. Now it's not just theoretical. It becomes, maybe in the beginning it's a bit theoretical, but it's really highly personal now for me and my wife. It's intensely personal. But we also struggle with this sometimes, but the Lord is now a real present person in our relationship. So the more I grow in Him, it's true, the more I grow in my loving kindness towards my wife. So the more I understand how much I'm loved and how gracious and kind and patient He is with me. And in that relationship, I receive it, and then I'm giving it to my wife. But so that is the best way of doing it. If you are not going to rely on the Lord, some people don't. Some people don't even believe in Him, and then they just continue. You can still learn the skills, it's true, but this is a huge source of love and feedback. So it's a person that knows everything you're saying and doing and feeling and thinking, and can really be honest with you. The Holy Spirit is not quiet. The world does not know Him, but when you know the Holy Spirit, wow, He knows you. He speaks to you. Just this morning in the car, last night when we had Bible study in our home, the Lord gave me a verse for my children. And just this morning in the car when my children had their quiet time and we were driving, I said, what is the word for the day? It was exactly the same theme for them. And it was amazing. So the Holy Spirit really makes His message clear. But the message is loving, but it's also truthful. It also cuts. So you've got to receive that first, and then grow in that place where you forgive, and you become unconditional in your love. Now that is not easy, I know. But now, keeping in mind that the way that we communicate, so the quote that my professor used to say is, communication is not part of the relationship. Communication is the relationship. It is all there is, really. There isn't anything else. It is verbal, non-verbal, and physical communication. What else is there? You can write a note, that's communication. You can wash the dishes, that's communication. It's a love language, yes it is, but it's communication. Everything is communication. So you've got to make sure that what you feel and think, that you express that. But yes, love languages makes a difference. You've got to learn the style of love that your partner expresses in, and the way that your partner, your wife or husband wants to be loved in. But what do you use to get to that place? You listen. So it's a skill again, talking and listening. So you've got to learn to listen to their needs, and they've got to learn to express it. So I've got this client that she never expresses that she wants her husband to wash the dishes. She just assumes that he should now know it because she's cooked. And then frustrations built up, and then one day, kaboom, and she expresses it, but then she expresses it obviously in an ineffective way, angry, and then he's defensive, and then he goes into, but I earn the money here, I bring home the bacon, and then they start weighing up who's doing what. Can you see the communication veered off into ineffective ways now? Now it's causing destruction. And the longer they do that, the stronger the pattern becomes. So now you've got to go to the Lord again and say, Lord, I'm upset, I'm angry, teach me. But that's next week. I'm going ahead of myself. What you've got to do is you've got to know that how you treat your partner, how they treat you, that is the relationship. So communication is the relationship. And to be effective then is critical for a happy relationship. Okay, so you've got to work on all the things. Even your posture, yes, you've got to work on that. You've got to work on the way the arms folding, those things, really, it does make a difference. I use this in the workshops, and I say, okay, let's test a few of these things. If I look at you this way, how does it make you feel? Or I look at you this way. So, even the tilt of a head does make a difference. Or my voice, I'm not screaming at you. Yes, really? But you're talking awfully loud. So the idea here is that you grow in the way that you express yourself, even if your partner doesn't. Now that makes it very hard, but at least you've got control of yourself mostly, and you've got to ask the Holy Spirit to help you. And that's where then, firstly, like I said, repeat, your relationship with Him is the most important, and then you get loved, and then you can give love, and that's what you're always going to draw from. You're never going to draw from that person. Otherwise it becomes, I'm not saying you're not going to receive love from that, but that's not your primary place where you draw from. So your anchor is the Lord, and then you receive and give love in that relationship, and it becomes this beautiful dance. Okay, so in the end, I'm writing a book. I hope someday I'll be finished. The title is It's in the How, the Art of Interacting with People. So in the end, it boils down to how you say things, how you speak about it, how you express it. So you can say something. Let me then go about what are you going to express it. So it's your facts, your feelings, but then you go to needs. That's one of the things people really fight about. It's because I don't feel loved. I don't feel that person cares for me. Or the needs of a husband and a wife. I've got those videos as well. A husband needs sex, and he needs the attractive wife, and he needs the adventure partner, and he needs somebody to keep, their house and all those things. And the wife needs this emotional, understanding person that provides and that's part of the family, and that's interested in supporting and listening. And then, if you express that in let's say you're the wife, and your husband doesn't ever brings you flowers, and you say to him, "You never bring me flowers." Now you can either say that, or you can say, "I love flowers. Flowers make me feel loved, and I would love it if you can bring me flowers." You can say that it's been a while since I've received flowers from you, but you're speaking from now you've heard that, the I message. Can you see just feel the effect of it? If you use this one, "You never bring me flowers," how would you respond to that? Would you bring flowers? Tomorrow you'll just slam it down there, it's like, "You flowers." Yeah, it's just because I told you. Can you see the blame and the guilt? Here it is, an invitation or an expression. So I'm giving I'm just rushing over it, but the idea there is that it is how you express yourself. Now I want to tell you that in my marriage and with Elsie, we also then give each other feedback about how we talk. So sometimes we just say things, and then I would say, "When you said it this way, it affected me this way. Would you rather do this? Because then it would affect me this way." So that's another principle. So the idea here is to work on how you do this. Now I can tell you, and I tell you this from experience, if you do this and you really work at this and you ask the Lord to help you, you are bound to get effects. Even if the other person does not work at that, if you work on it, you are going to affect them. Yes, my Afrikaans coming through. So you affect them. And then what happens is that in time, that forces them to start to change their pattern. But it's going to take work and lots of grace from the Lord over you, and lots of love from Him for you, and lots of forgiveness from your side. Because what do you forgive? You forgive the effect of how they treat you, how their style affects you. It's the impact on you that you forgive and forget. You're not going to forget, but you forgive, and the more you forgive, the more you forget. So the idea there is that you start to forgive, but then you start to. So the way that you express yourself, and it's bound to have an effect. I know that's not easy. Thanks, Serena. I'm glad you for your comment. Okay, so here is the clinical quote again. Everything that we do has an effect or impact on each other, and it elicits a reaction. So the idea here is that the sender says something in a way that has an effect on the receiver. The receiver feels that impact and reacts to it. Usually we are trained to not scream at our 2-year-olds when they have an impact on us. They throw a tantrum and you don't want to give them ice cream, and it's time for bed and you are tired, but usually we just react to that impact. But when you're trained, when you're not so tired, then you start to think about that impact of how they're treating you and what they're communicating, and then you react in a different way. Now that's what I'm talking about. So when that person is doing something to you, you think about it. What is happening here? How is it affecting me? Sorry, I'm banging the mic. And how do I want to react? But for you to remember how you act towards people has an effect. You can't just go about thinking people should just understand that you mean this when you do that. What my prof used to say is that your intention and your behavior should be aligned. If you intend to say something, your behavior, what you say and do, should be in line with it, meaning it should be clear that this is your intention. But many a times we intend to say something, but we come out a totally different way. So that's what your responsibility is to make sure. Now, how are you going to do that on your own? You need a therapist. Yes, you do. But you can also grow through the Holy Spirit and through watching videos like this. I mean, you're already watching, so you want to grow. So that's all for you. But the idea here is that you've got to get feedback on how you're acting. So what you want to do is start to experiment with how you're expressing yourself, and make sure that you understand others, and ask them, did I express myself clearly? Please tell me if I came across vaguely, or if I did not, if my request is not clear. And then your tone of voice can also be polite. You get these people who just have finesse in the way they act and treat. Now, I don't always have finesse, but I try and have finesse. And that because I want to affect the other person. I want to have an impact that is pleasant. I want to elicit a reaction that is also pleasant on me. I don't want people to fight with me day and night. It's not so lekker. Is geen leuk, glad nie. Niks leuk nie. That's Dutch, my poor effort at Dutch. Okay, so I want to give you a quote here. So there are lots of ways of treating people, lots of styles. So you can have an effective style. An effective style means that you're able to say what you really feel and think in such a way that it doesn't blame the other person, doesn't make them feel horrible about themselves. It does not break them down. It makes them hear you clearly, what you are thinking and feeling. And because that's one of the very effective ways. And then the other effective way of communicating is to make sure that you're always communicating your acceptance of that person unconditionally. So the clinical word was unconditional positive regard. And that means that I'm accepting you even though I don't agree with you. I'm still going to love you as a person, but I don't agree and I don't like the way you're treating me. But I'm not going to reject, and well, you might in the end sometimes distance yourself from somebody, but I'm not going to break you down, and I'm not going to, an eye for an eye. I'm not going to do that. And the third part is I'm going to be genuine. Try and be honest. That's what the word also says, is to live honestly, not cruelly. Honestly, honesty isn't cruelty, but it can sometimes be harsh. But it has to be given in love. Okay, so people have styles then, like I said, and one of those is then the effective style has those components to it, and obviously that person is able to really listen to what the other person says and to put themselves in that person's shoes and to communicate that. Now we had a family member who was a wonderful person, and she could listen to you for hours, but she does not respond back, really expressing her compassion and her empathy and her understanding. She had to learn the skill to say, when I listen to you here, I can hear you saying that, and I can hear you feeling that, because that has an impact on the other side that makes that person feel understood and heard. So even that person, even though they did listen, they were quiet and they listened, they didn't interrupt, that person doesn't really know what they heard. So now I've got to give them feedback and say, this is what I heard, but in an empathic way. Okay, so what I then heard is that ineffective styles, let me give you that, there's lots of research on that. So the ineffective style is the person who treats the other person in such a way that it does not also take them into account. So critical, blaming, rejecting, controlling. Controlling means I'm getting you to do something that I want you to do without your consent, or without you really it's not a win-win. It's me forcing you in some way, or treating you in some way that you're going to do this because I say so. So it's not an equal relationship. So I'm in control. That doesn't work. That works at the office when you are the supervisor and the other. That's different. But in a couple's relationship, it doesn't work. Or when you become the victim and you manipulate through your sympathy seeking. the way you express yourself as, I'm the victim, you've hurt me, it's your fault, you've caused this, and it's all your fault. What you do is we say you induce guilt. So the way that you're expressing yourself is inducing guilt because you're feeling so injured, and you might actually be truly injured, but it's the way that you're expressing yourself is causing the other person to actually become more frustrated with you and will probably do more harm. Or you become defensive and offensive, or you become very sensitive, like I was, and defend yourself. I did that, and then I just tire the other person, and they just feel like they just offend me all the time because I'm insecure. Oh man, there's so much to say. And or you can be very subtle. We call it incongruence. You're not real. You're not genuine. You're smiling with you. But you're not genuine, you're false. You say one thing but you do another. That's obviously, there's lots of styles. Can't go into all of them, but the idea there is that also this quiet, withdrawn person who has got a style, and when you're upset you withdraw. So that means in fact you're rejecting the other person. I see Amelia said calibrating reality and perceived reality. Yes, that is you must make sure that your reality is expressed so clearly that the other person actually heard your reality, and that's where you check with them. You clarify. They've got to clarify with you. Did I hear you correctly? And you've got to clarify. Did I, in the way that I sent my message, did I come across? Okay, now people fight about. So it's about how you treat other people. It's about how you express yourself. It's about how you show empathy, how you understand, how you accept the person, and then how you express your needs. Now people tell me, but personalities doesn't that play a role in communication? It sure does, but where psychology is at the moment is it's moving away from pop psychology's personality styles, and because in essence that's not really where psychology is. Psychology is developed, especially interactional psychology and systems psychology, to this interactional style, and to say whether you're effective or not. Because a certain context or a certain situation asks certain behavior from you. If you're in court, you can't just stand up there and have a I'm on the beach day attitude. You've got to act in a certain way, because that's how it works in court, and that is what is effective in court. And it's the same with when you're on the cricket field. You've got to act in a certain way, and when you're in a relationship with somebody that's romantic, you've got to act in a certain way. Now it feels false to some people. Yeah, but this is not real, I'm pretending. Yes, initially it does feel that way. If you've got to learn to ride a bicycle, it is not easy in the beginning, and it feels false and it feels forced, but you get to learn the rules and the ways of riding a bicycle, and in time, with practice, you actually ride it naturally, and then after a while it does not feel so forced anymore. It doesn't feel like you are not doing this naturally. So in a relationship it is the same. You've got to learn to express yourself in such a way that actually makes the other person feel loved. Okay, yes, it's so difficult to review. I hope I'm clear. Now, I can't get feedback from you really, apart from the messages on whether I am clear. So that's the dilemma here. It's one-way communication mostly. Okay, so there's a quote from Menander. It says, and this is now talking about your style and how you express yourself, and that what you say and do has an effect, and it has an impact, and it is power. So Menander said something powerful. He said, "It is as easy to draw back a stone thrown with force from the hand as to recall a word once spoken." I'm going to repeat that. It is as easy to draw back a stone thrown with force from the hand as to recall a word once spoken. So if you imagine this guy standing by the edge of a lake, throwing this pebble onto the lake, and it's bouncing. Now, can you go and collect that pebble again? It's going to take a lot of work and time and effort to get that pebble, if you could ever get it back. And it's the same with your communication. So how you express yourself. So you can't just fly off the handle, or you can't just be quiet forever. You've got to learn, what am I saying that I'm feeling? Why am I feeling this? And how can I say it in a way that doesn't come across as as blaming and attacking, but comes across as explaining and requesting and expressing my needs and just talking about what I'm feeling and what it is that I want to explain. Okay, there's another thing. Obviously, this starts with self-awareness. That means growing in how you talk. So I remember when we trained, I received feedback from this one lecturer during this one group training, and he said, Erich, you are expressing yourself, trying to be, you're sincere. Obviously, people can see I'm trying my best to really express myself. But I was thinking aloud, and I was confusing the others. Because I would say this, and then I would say that, and then I would say this, and then I would say that, because I'm thinking and I'm juggling with my thoughts. And he said, wait, stop, it's very confusing on this side. Could you think through what you want to say first, and then express yourself? And that, for me, was actually a turnaround, because I realized, Erich, you've got a brain, man. You've got to work in here and formulate what it is that you want to say, and make sure it's clear, and make sure it's it's effective, and think about how it's going to make the other person feel. You know, there's a scripture where Jesus said the golden rule: treat others the way you would want them to treat you. So what I then often do is I ask myself, how would I feel if I heard this? And if I was in that person's shoes, how would I feel if I heard this? Okay, so that helps you to start to grow and to ask yourself, am I contributing to this problem that is happening here, or am I helping this? So what I've also realized is that, and I also want to ask my wife or myself, what is my wife contributing? Why am I feeling this? What is her style, and how is it affecting me? I know it becomes a bit technical, but let me give you another quote that is good from Philip Bernard from the University of Wales. He says, counseling skills are the bedrock skill upon which all other interpersonal skills are built. So it will do you well to develop counseling skills. Now, I'm not saying you got to go and become a counselor. No. But it will help. But counseling skills actually is the foundation of building trust, because that's what we are trained to do, is to build trust. And that's what you want in a marital relationship. You want to have the other person trust you in a very deep and authentic way. And counseling skills are aimed at doing that. So it would be wise to start to figure out what is it that counselors do to win your trust very quickly, and how do they maintain your trust. So I want to encourage you to do that, and then to start to work on those things that I mentioned a bit earlier: the empathy, the unconditional positive regard, and because there's a beautiful scripture, 1 Peter 4 verse 8, it says, above all things, above all things. So that means the most important thing here, have intense and unfailing love for one another. For love covers a multitude of sins, forgives, and in brackets it says forgives and disregards the offenses of others. So the Lord wants you to be motivated and driven by this love. So love also says, I'm thinking about you. I'm thinking about you. When you've been hurt, when you were hurt by your partner and you're upset, how you're going to love them is going to be seen in how you address this problem. Even if you were hurt, if you're going to address it in the way that is effective, then you're going to love them. Now, some relationships, and I want to put a disclaimer here, are violent or emotionally abusive. Now, I'm not saying you should. Love does not mean that you're the doormat there and that you are trampled upon and you've got no voice. No, that's not what I'm saying. That is a situation that has to be dealt with separately. The love that you are going to show is by not retaliating in kind. So you're going to give a different assertive approach, where you're going to put your foot down, but in a different way. And that also helps the other person, because it gives them just a stronger message of feedback. So it's still feedback that you're going to give them and how they treat you, but it's also a boundary that you're going to say, I'm not going to. So I've got a video on that, a video series. Go to YouTube, Matters of the Soul. I'm going to give that a bit later as well. There I've got a series on boundaries, and I've got boundaries in marriage, boundaries in abuse, So you go and have a look there, and I'm really clear there, but it's still in how you communicate. You're still not going to be attacking and in kind, you're going to be effective for that situation. So depending on the context and the situation, you're going to be effective. So lots of other things. So you consider how you treat others, how that makes them feel. But now you're not God, me neither. So you're going to make mistakes, and you're going to hurt others, and you are going to have that effect on others that you don't want. And they're going to be upset with you. So what you then do is you take ownership for how you have treated them, regardless of how they've treated you. So meaning you take ownership for your share. But if they've hurt you, you can still address that and give them feedback on that. But you take ownership. Why? Because you have affected them. You've had an impact on them. If it was retaliating on something they've done, you retaliated. Somebody said to me once in counseling, he said, I'm not wrong because I'm just retaliating on that person. It's them. They started it. In one sense, that person was right. The other person did start it sometimes. Sometimes the other person was the first party to do it. But how you respond is still your responsibility. So how you're going to react is still yours. So you've got to work on how you can't just retaliate. You're now mature. You grow in Christ. Christ didn't just retaliate. He thought and he prayed and he spoke. So you're going to act, but that doesn't mean that you accept abuse. Well, that's clear. And I think there's just so much more to say. And then I said talking and then listening. Let me just give something about listening. I want to say something about empathy. Give you just a word as the Latin for empathy. The Latin word for inner or innermost is intimus. For if one grasps the inner reality of someone, he grasps the intimus, the innermost character of the person. So if you're really good at listening, that's being quiet, so that you're now posturing yourself. The other person is upset. It happened a week or so ago. My wife was sitting with something. Emotionally, I was there. She wanted to talk, express herself, and pour out her heart. So it was then the situation where I had to show empathy. So I thought the way that I'm going to treat her now can either make her feel loved and understood, or it can make her feel rejected and not heard. So if the way that I'm going to express myself, so I'm going to express myself by posturing my body in such a way that she feels heard, and by listening, and by empathically, that means concerned and kind reactions and responses, listening to her and giving her a chance to talk, and then reflecting feelings. Now that you can hear, that's the counselor coming through, but it worked, and it made my wife feel, she debriefed, she felt loved, and that made her feel closer to me, and that brought emotional closeness. So can you see the way you express yourself either draws people closer or it pushes them away? So if I was there, I was irritated by her talking now and I wanted to do something else, it would make her feel, it would have the effect on her of her, actually rejecting her, because this is the one relationship that I really have to work at intensely. I don't have to love all the women on earth, I have to love one woman really intensely. So I can be kind to all the others, but I have to love this one. So God just made it easy to just give me one, not King Solomon. So just to love, and to love that person well. So I can give my full attention, and then in reflecting, that makes a huge difference. It made her feel loved. And it actually facilitated her to feel better much sooner. Now, that brought intimacy, because I was grasping the intimus of that person. Now, Thomas Oden pointed that out. That was a nice quote. Okay, so I think I've shared so much now about communication. So to wrap this up, it is how you treat other people. It consists of what the words you use, obviously the kind of words, the vocabulary you use. So you'll do well to learn feeling vocabulary, kind words, kind phrases, ways to express yourself in a way that makes that person feel loved. I listen. I actually have notes on Google Keep Notes. I've got this, and I keep notes on ways that people talk that I think, oh, that made me feel really good. So I write that down. I incorporate it into my style, because your style is then the way that you're going to dance with others, and that the way that you're going to express yourself. And if you can be a very good dancer, then other people will feel like they're flying on the dance floor with you, and they're not stumbling and falling. So it's about how you treat them. So, and then so you've got to be a student of finesse, of how to talk, how to think, how to use your body. My prof used to say, you are your best tool in psychotherapy. But now he says, you are a psychotherapist, he used to say to us. That means that you are the way that you treat people. That is who you are. It becomes who you are. So that's why the Lord emphasizes that incredibly. Be kind, but don't fight, make peace. He's talking about all the ways that you communicate, that you express yourself. So you'll be wise to learn from others. So I try to look at how people come across, and ways that they even use their body or facial expressions. I've even looked to find details of how people have used their voices, and even mimicking some of their gestures. I've incorporated that. I'm like a sponge. And then I also obviously see the guy in the bank, of people that I think that is how not to do it. So you can also learn from how not to do it. I've even used some clips from videos of movies that I've seen. I thought, wow, what an apology. That was exquisite. So I look at it again, and I think that is the way to apologize. That I can use that. How does it make that person feel on the other side? That's the key, because you're going to elicit a reaction. And that either draws the person closer or not. I think of the person with the example I used earlier. You never bring me flowers. How does that make you feel? If you're the other person, you hear that. Blamed. And if you're blamed, do you want to be close to that person or distant from them? If you want to be close to them, please come and see me. If you're going to want to be distant from them, if that person said, I would love to receive flowers from you, it would make me feel loved. I see how you are doing this, and I appreciate that. But wow, flowers would be so great. Would you please give me flowers? How would that make you feel? Yes, it would. Obviously, you'd be, oh, I didn't give him flowers, but you might have a little bit of a conviction, but not a condemnation. You might be, oh, that's what they wanted, and I'll try to do that. Or I'll try better, or I'll try, you'll use that. It makes a huge difference. And will that draw you closer or push you away? I'm sure that it will draw you closer. So to say to yourself and to ask the Lord, teach me how to be a person to express myself in such a way that I'm understood, but to also help me to understand the other person. The 7 habits of highly effective people. Do not let me give you this one. One of the biggest communication problems we have is that we do not listen to understand, we listen to reply. So the 7 habits says, seek to be understood, or seek to understand before you want to be understood. So that kind of attitude. And then you ask the Lord to help you with it, because that's the Lord's way, is to give. Thanks, Zarina. Appreciate your comment there. Okay, so I've shared a lot, and next week I'm going to talk about then the conflict part of it, and I'm going to give you some ways to deal with that. So in 1 hour, I've squished in a whole year's training. Okay, so lots of stuff here. God bless you, and it was lovely to spend time with you, and thanks for all your comments. I love that. Please do send us your questions as well. You can do it via Messenger on Facebook. The other resources we have is we've got loads of videos on our YouTube channel, Matters of the Soul. Just go to the playlists, and you'll see there are playlists on couples, there are playlists on boundaries, like I said, on assertiveness, on children, on anxiety, trauma, panic, whatever. Loads of stuff. And please do share that with others. Matters of the Soul has a non-profit trust where that also helps in funding this. So if you want to become a partner with that, please contact us as well, because we do rely on donations. And we actually, if you're in South Africa, we offer an Article 18A certificate. That means you can deduct your... Now, I'm not asking you for money, but I am just sharing the opportunity with you. Okay, so there's just so much more to say on this, but maybe I'll do a webinar on this once. I want to just end off with a proverb and then a scripture for you. There's a proverb, and and this is good. He said, or she said, "Deliver your words not by number, but by weight." That's good. Deliver your words not by number, but by weight. So think about what you're saying and how you're saying it. It is good, that one. And then a last scripture. It was St. Francis of Assisi who said, "Grant that we may not so much seek to be understood as to understand." And then this one, where is that scripture that I want to share with you? Okay, to Philippians 2 verses 2 to 4 in the Message. Agree with each other, love each other, be deep-spirited friends. Don't push your way to the front, don't sweet talk your way to the top. Put yourself aside and help others get ahead. Don't be obsessed with getting your own advantage. Forget yourselves long enough to lend a helping hand. That means get out of your own frame of reference and also listen and love and work towards agreement. So it's how you express yourself. It's how you communicate. Whether you do that on the couch for couch time, when you do that in the bed and you have sex, how you have sex also is communication. How you treat the other person. It ends up there. Okay, it's nice spending time with you. God bless you. And I will get back to you, and you can email me and whatever. La-di-da. See you next time. Bye.